So it is very clear now that Kamala Harris has narrowed down her choices for VP. And I think you need to see some of these picks. Of course, you guys know she was going to pick a white male, similar to Obama, to, I guess, make her campaign more palatable or whatever to white voters. So, of course, you know, she's going to do that. And that is all she's looking at. I haven't even seen her entertain someone else of a different race or whatever. But now that has been narrowed down. And we're going to focus on a couple of these because there are pros and cons about them. I'm not voting for Kamala regardless of who she picks. I think there's a poll question there for you guys about that. Some of you may want to wait and answer that poll until after you see these picks here. But we're going to go ahead and get started with this clip from CNN. I think you guys need to see who she has narrowed it down to. One quick note, Roy Cooper, governor of North Carolina. I have a couple friends that live in North Carolina. Back in my old school NC days, some of them are still there. And they have talked to me about Roy Cooper before. But Roy Cooper was one of the possibilities for her VP, and she has decided now she is not going to continue on with him. Some people are surprised by that because they were pretty close, but it is announced here, and we'll get to the other picks, that she is not moving forward with Roy Cooper.
Breaking news, we are learning one of the men viewed as a top contender to become Harris's running mate has taken himself out of consideration. A source telling CNN that the North Carolina governor, Roy Cooper, expressed concern about going through the vetting process at the age of 67 and about the state's lieutenant governor performing his duties if he was pulled out of the state. Jeff Zeleny is out front live from the key swing state of Michigan. So, Jeff, obviously, this is a development. Some had pointed to North Carolina as, changing the map, and that the governor there on the ticket could have assisted with that. But now he's making it clear that that will not happen. What are you learning about the Veep stakes tonight?
Aaron, we know that this is just one more example. This is a very accelerated search process. I am told tonight that this decision could come within the week or certainly before August 7th. My colleague MJ Lee and I are reporting that the North Carolina governor is no longer in consideration, withdrawing his name. I am told because he simply was not at the top of the list. Age has been a concern, I'm told, from some in the Harris campaign. He's 67 years old. Of course, she is trying to turn the page and look toward a more vigorous campaign, a more youthful campaign, perhaps. This does not mean that North Carolina is not still a battleground state in the eyes of the Harris campaign. It absolutely is. It does not change the relationship. Sort of ironically, the governor and Vice President Harris have the longest and closest relationship, we are told, of any of the contenders on the list. They served as attorneys general together in their respective states. But look, every choice of a running mate is based on a variety of factors. It's based on comfort level, of course, but it's also based on what can help in this campaign. I'm told that extensive research is being done around Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, as well as Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, as well.
We'll pause here for a second. So Roy Cooper, is it Cooper? Everyone I know calls him Roy Cooper because it's spelled Roy Cooper. But anyway, Roy is out. There does seem to be an age issue there as well, apparently, with him being 67 years old. It's really interesting. I want to highlight this comment here from Janine. This is good to know. When I lived in NC, even though the state is red, Cooper won because he got us our raises. The government there is trash without him. Yeah, bruh. I mean, I went to high school in North Carolina and it was red, red, red back then. I was surprised when Obama won North Carolina.
Well, as potentially other people on that list, but those two are among the contenders who are getting the closest look tonight. Of course, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has also been in the mix, and the Harris campaign has been very watching with interest at how he has been performing in what really has been sort of a rolling set of auditions. We saw that in Pennsylvania tonight as well. The governor there, Josh Shapiro, he said Vice President Harris is not only ready, she's damn ready. So he is.
Pause. So we're going to talk about these for just a second, and then I'm going to go over some receipts for some of them because I think there's some things you need to see. So we have top contenders, Governor Andy Beshear. He's from Kentucky. Then you have Secretary, oh, Jesus Christ, Pete Buttigieg. Sorry. I'm sorry. We'll get back to Pete. Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona. Governor Josh Shapiro is from Pennsylvania, and Governor Tim Walz is from Minnesota. So let's start with Governor Andy Beshear. I don't think she's going to pick him, although he is younger. This is something you got to remember again. The vice president, just keep in mind, there is a chance that they could be president. So we look at where we are now. So let's just keep that in mind. I don't think she's going to pick him because, yeah, he's from Kentucky. Kentucky's a red state. He's young. But I just don't see her leaning towards that way because obviously she cannot win the state of Kentucky. I see her choosing someone of a state that she may be, it might be a swing state or a state that she may need to win. So we're going to X out Andy Beshear because we know Kentucky is going to be red. Now let's move on to Pete, to Booty. Now, the thing about Booty, and we need to break this down for a second. They seem to get along pretty well from what I've been reading. They've had several events and engagements together, Kamala and Pete, but people, for whatever reason, seem to like them together. That being said, we got to talk about some things. We have to talk about what just happened not too long ago in East Palestine, Ohio, with that train derailment and how long it took for Pete to respond to the people there. I want to remind you that people in East Palestine, Ohio are still sick. People are still having symptoms today. So I'm not sure about her picking Booty. And the reason why I say that is because, remember, East Palestine, Ohio, you got to remember, it's like right on the border of Ohio and Pennsylvania. So there could be some influence there with the western part of the state of Pennsylvania, where they may be like, whoa, nah, bruh, we're not trying to rock with him, because even some of those chemicals made their way over into Western PA as well. That's one problem. Two, the other problem you're going to run into with Booty, like Kamala, his record on policing is not good. When Booty was mayor of, I forgot the name of the place. Jesus, I forgot it. Booty was the mayor. Why can't I remember? The town, Notre Dame. Damn it, it'll come back. Anyway, when Booty was thank you, Eric. South Bend, thank you. When Booty was mayor of South Bend, one of the issues that he had, particularly with Black voters, was the way that he handled the police. There were a number of complaints from Black residents in South Bend about racist police officers, about police brutality. There was a Black police officer at South Bend that complained about racism in the police department, and he was demoted. Now, why does that affect the job of the mayor? Because Booty, as the mayor, can actually fire the chief of police. So he could have fired that person that was allowing all of that to continue. He chose not to. There was a Black mother in South Bend, Indiana, that complained to Pete because her son was found hanging from a tree. This is all mad, wild stuff, fam. And I remember talking about this back when. This is why when he was running for president in 2020, I was like, ooh, Black people are not going to get in line for Pete, because it's going to start coming out what happened in South Bend, Indiana, and how he handled the police. And it did. It came out on the debate stage. So Booty may not be a good pick for Cam. Okay, let's move on to Senator Mark Kelly. I mean, she already got to defend her own prosecutorial record. Now you're going to try to have to defend Booty's record with police as well. Also, Booty didn't poll well with Black people. We got to remember that. Let's move on. Mark Kelly. This is the senator here from Arizona. So I could kind of see her maybe leaning towards Mark Kelly, in particular, because right now Donald Trump is beating Kamala Harris in Arizona. I still predict that Arizona will be red because that is a border state. And a lot of the border states, the voters have been complaining about the border issue. Whether you agree with it or not, that is just the reality. They don't seem to be too happy about what is happening there. So I could see Arizona returning back to red. And I've stated this months ago that I think this is going to happen. The problem that you run into with Senator Mark Kelly, if he decides to, be Kamala Harris's running mate, then that means that Senate seat is now going to be open. So now you have to get someone to run for Mark Kelly's Senate seat. And it could very possibly end up being a Republican that gets that seat. You never know. Arizona is kind of, up in the air these days. So that would be a tricky position to be with. With the governors, it's a little bit easier. But with the Senate seat, you would be giving up that seat, right? So there's that. So she may be leaning a little bit towards Mark Kelly because Arizona swing state. So that she's thinking maybe that could help her if she got him on her ticket. Maybe that could help her with Arizona. I don't think that it will, though. And then there's Governor Josh Shapiro. We're going to get into more details about him. But one thing I'm going to tell you, he is governor in Pennsylvania. He tends to have a pretty good approval rating in Pennsylvania. Where I think that would hurt her, though, is with young voters. And I'll get into the details about that in just a second. And then you have Governor Tim Walz from Minnesota. And one second. Sorry, my throat is like itchy. Governor Tim Walz from Minnesota. Another state that I would assume she's going to win anyway, but Minnesota is one of those states that they still say could be kind of up for grabs. So most people are probably going to say she should lean towards him, but I got a feeling she won't. And we'll get into that in just a second.
Has been outperforming, really showing what a running mate could be. But Aaron, this all comes as Republicans clearly have been knocked off balance a bit by J.D. Vance and some things in his history, what he has said before. That is one of the reasons that even though this surge has accelerated, I'm told that everything is being looked at very carefully, what all these candidates have potentially said, because as we know, anything that you said previously can certainly be used against you in the coming race.
Absolutely. All right, as you stand in Michigan now in the latest poll, I know tied, and obviously Biden had been down significantly there prior to that. Thanks to Jeff Zeleny. Okay, panel here. Max Rose, let me start with you. I'm just going to take a pause here and say we've really gone a new world where now 67 is too old. I mean, I think we can just back off that a little bit here, but okay. But Roy Cupper now is out. He doesn't want to be considered. So, and you hear, we know significant vetting around Kelly from Arizona and Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania, among possibly others. That could be Tim Walz, Pritzker, we don't know. So who do you think that she should choose?
Look, I think she needs to think about the electoral map. And Governor Shapiro stands out in that regard. Here's the interesting thing about the vice presidential decision. It is.
Yeah, we'll stop there because I'm going to break some things down about some of these candidates or these options that she has here. We're going to start with Governor Shapiro. This one would be a problem for Kamala, for young voters, especially those that participated in the pro-Palestine marches and cause, because Josh Shapiro does not land well on that issue. And I think this would be a huge red flag. Look at this. This one is coming from Dr. T. I am praying Kamala Harris will just say no to Josh Shapiro. Shapiro's stances on free speech, academic freedom, and blatant disregard for Palestinian Pennsylvanians and refusal to call for a ceasefire is unacceptable, ladies and gentlemen. Opposition to ceasefire. Shapiro has also been criticized for refusing to call for a ceasefire in Gaza, despite children being among the biggest victims of the assault. Look at this part highlighted here. At a time when governors of California and New Jersey have underlined in public statements their support for a ceasefire in Gaza, Governor Shapiro failed to do that. His attacks on academic freedom, intentionally depicting protests in a negative light, failure to care for and listen to the Palestinian Pennsylvanians whose families are being massacred day in and out by the Israeli government, and his behind the scenes antagonization of community organizations cannot be ignored and easily forgiven. So, fam, Josh Shapiro would be a problem for younger voters that are pro-Palestine, because not only was he against the protests, and we'll get into this a little bit more in this article from Common Dreams, but he also wanted to punish universities that wanted to divest from Israel. So that right there lets you know exactly where Josh Shapiro stands. I think that would be harmful towards Kamala Harris's presidency, but it's not like she really gives a damn. Common Dreams really like lays this all out. Like, I don't know who chose these people for her. I don't know if her campaign team thought, oh, these are the people you should look at. But I think she needs to revisit her list, because apparently she's going to make her announcement in 7 days. So listen to this. Common Dreams is all like, they really laid this out. Why Josh Shapiro is not the right choice for Harris VP. We're going to jump to, I don't know what that is. This part right here. A Harris Shapiro ticket would jeopardize all of that. They're talking about here Arab Americans and Muslims, many of whom devoted weeks or months of their lives in 2020 to defeating Trump on behalf of the Biden-Harris ticket. And we're going to jump down here. If Harris now chooses a running mate who intensely connects her to Biden's policies on the Gaza war that are so unpopular with much of the Democratic base, party unity and the chances of defeating Trump would be undermined. Overall, Josh Shapiro is a liberal and sometimes progressive on domestic issues, though notably not on fracking or tax subsidies or private schools. Everybody hear that? So when you hear them tout about big climate change and all climate reform and all that kind of stuff, just remember this about Josh Shapiro. But on the contentious issue of Israel's relentless war against Palestinian civilians in Gaza, Shapiro sounds much less bothered by the lethal violence than by U.S. ceasefire activists, many of whom he has demonized. A little bit of the history here. Let's dive down here. In 2021, after Ben & Jerry's refused to sell its products to Israel's illegal settlements, then Attorney General Josh Shapiro threatened the company by urging Pennsylvania state agencies to enforce a constitutionally suspect law targeting advocates of boycott, divestment, and sanctions, BDS, against Israel over its discriminatory policies. Now, this is very dangerous. If she were to pick Josh Shapiro, we could possibly look at an administration that is going to implement laws against protesters that are against Israel, against BDS protests, BDS movements, etc. This is very dangerous. We're looking at a censorship guy. He wants to censor people. He wants to punish schools that want to divest from Israel. I don't know about you, but I'm not trying to have more censorship. So not a good idea. It goes on to say here, oh, pardon me 1 second. Okay. Sorry, I had to wipe my nose. Oh, here we go. He said BDS is rooted in anti-Semitism. And he knows this is a damn lie. This is, again, Josh Shapiro. Okay. This is who she looking at. Everybody pay attention to that. He goes on to say, after October 7th, Pennsylvania-based Muslim groups wrote a letter protesting Governor Shapiro's one-sided comments. Not only did you fail to recognize the structural root causes of the conflict, you chose to intentionally ignore the civilian loss of life in Gaza. We all must speak with moral clarity and support Israel's right to defend itself. That was his response. So it is very apparent as well that Shapiro is not willing to, I guess, hear what the Palestinian civilians in citizens in Pennsylvania have to say. He doesn't want to hear where they're coming from. So this is going to be a problem. Right now, Jill Stein is beating Kamala Harris with the Muslim vote. I'll show you that in a second. Right now, Jill Stein is beating Kamala Harris with the Muslim votes. So keep that in mind. It goes on to say here, beginning in late April, Governor Shapiro and his office repeatedly prodded campuses to restore order and take action against student encampments, including the University of Pennsylvania. He goes on to say here, Shapiro invoked student safety in demanding the encampment be shut down. Police shut it down the next day, arresting 33 people. In 2 different interviews, Shapiro seemed to compare campus ceasefire activists, many of whom are Jewish or students of color, to white supremacists camped out and yelling racial slurs. So Josh Shapiro was calling students of color and other Jewish students that were protesting against Israel, he was calling them white supremacists. I don't know who in the hell told Kamala Harris that it was a good idea to look at this guy, but it is not a good idea to look at this guy. Because bet, fam, come November, all this going to come back up. If she announces him as the VP, all of this is going to come back up. It goes on to say, he also compared them to people dressed in KKK outfits. This is insane. There's one more here. July 23rd, Nina Turner wrote, choosing Governor Shapiro for vice president would be a mistake. Governor Shapiro compared pro-peace protesters to the KKK. That is simply unacceptable and would stifle the momentum VP Harris has. Hopefully, she is looking to build a broad coalition to beat Trump. A broad coalition to beat Trump and a fascistic MAGA movement is exactly what is needed. Making Shapiro the nominee for vice president is exactly what we don't need. So again, a little bit there about Josh Shapiro and why that would be a bad move for Kamala Harris to choose for a VP pick. I think that would hurt her with younger voters. Right now, she's doing pretty well with young voters, but I think that would definitely hurt her. Particularly when these things come out. There's a little bit more here that I want to show you about his approval. New poll highlights Josh Shapiro approval rating during the VP search. So it says, Emerson College polling / The Hill survey found 49% of Pennsylvanians surveyed approve of Shapiro, while only 31% disapproved. 22% of Pennsylvania Republicans and 46% of independents approve of Shapiro's performance. So his approval rating is at 49%. Some people are like, oh yeah, that's a good percentage point to be at. It's almost half. I don't know. I think that one could be a mistake if she chose him. That's Shapiro. Now let's fast forward to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Tim Walz, I covered him last year when there was this viral video on Twitter of him signing into law the free school lunch for Minnesota students. That was Tim Walz. I want to take you back to him approving the free school lunch, which I think every kid should have free lunch and free breakfast in this country, et cetera, at these schools. I really do feel like no child should go hungry in this country. By the way, this move here in Minnesota did spark, a little bit of a trend here, I guess, because after this was passed in Minnesota, we passed it here in Massachusetts. So just keep that in mind. This is Governor Tim Walz, another one that she is considering.
And you said basically there's no such thing as a generic Republican. These guys are weird. Once they start running, their weirdness shows up. What did you mean? What weird?
I'll stand by that. Well, look, just the strange things they become obsessed with, demonizing our children, becoming obsessed with people's personal lives in their bedrooms, restricting freedoms. I'm surrounded by states who are spending their time figuring out how to ban Charlotte's Web in their schools while we're banishing hunger from ours with free breakfast and lunch. That's what the public's looking for. That's what they're trying to get to. And they will weirdly obsess with everything to be mean and cruel and small in their ideas. And I didn't hear anything last night that did anything different to that. So I'll stand by that. I just think Americans know this is just weird stuff to be focused on. And many of the times it's just projection. We hear these stories every time. They want to project morality to us. And I say, as your elected leaders, you don't need to hear a sermon from us, but you expect us to try and live one. And I think whether it's making sure the middle class has what they need, protecting reproductive rights, truly addressing climate change, governors are doing that across the country. They're popular with that. And I think we understand we're able to do that because of Joe Biden's policies, whether it's the Infrastructure Act, CHIPS Act, bringing manufacturing back to America. Those are things people want to hear about, not demonizing some child because of who they are. At the end of the day, Americans are better than that.
Governor Tim.
Okay, so that is Governor Tim Walz there. So again, he kind of went viral last year, particularly on Twitter, when he decided to sign that into law, free lunch for Minnesota kids, right? So they would not go hungry at school. Again, I think everybody can do that. And don't be mistaken by this, because again, this just goes to show you what can be accomplished at the local level, which is why I continue to say a lot of people tune in around election time for the presidential election because they believe that this one person is going to come in and save them. A lot of these things you can get done in your own state. There's a lot of things that we passed here in Massachusetts via ballot measures, right, that have not been passed on the national level. And when we talk about progressive policies have been passed in the states, just not on the national level yet. So that is Governor Tim Walz. Now, one thing I will say when it comes to policing, this is something I do want to mention. He did get criticism for this. Minnesota governor announces changes to policing practices. So you guys do have to remember it's Minnesota. And yes, this is around the George Floyd murder as well. So this is another thing that he did have to deal with. So it was this part here. Walz's executive action includes $15 million for violence prevention programs and changes to the state's policy on viewing of body cam footage. The move comes days after former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin was sentenced to 22 and a half years in prison for the death of George Floyd. This is what he went on to say. Right now, we have an opportunity to create safer communities for all Minnesotans by building a public safety system focused on transparency, accountability, and violence prevention. These policy changes and increased investments in safety, together with the Minnesota Police Accountability Act, signed into law last summer, and the bipartisan public safety plan this legislative session, gets us closer to a system of public safety that truly protects all Minnesotans. The $15 million in grants directed from funding received via the American Rescue Plan federal stimulus package will go toward community safety and violence intervention programs, as well as survivor support grants. The initiative also includes policy changes to increase transparency and accountability through the Minnesota Board of Peace Officer Standards and Training. So he did get some pushback from people about this. One of the things that he said is Black and brown people have not felt safe in Minnesota. This moment requires us to do something different to achieve justice for our community. We are asking our leaders to meet us in this challenge and intervene where they can enact stronger policies. We are not one Minnesota until all of us feel safe, protected, and particularly by those sworn to do so. But yeah, he received some pushback there for that. So, you know, some people have said that they don't feel he has been great on policing. That's another thing he may have to answer for. Now, what do I think she is going to do? I don't think that Kamala Harris is going to pick Tim Walz, even though he may be a little bit more aligned with like the free school lunch, that kind of thing. Like people are saying that's who she should pick, but strategically, I don't think that's who she's going to pick. I really do think she's going to pick Josh Shapiro or Mike Kelly. Mike Kelly, he was a former astronaut from what I understand. Astronaut? Wasn't he an astronaut? Yeah, I think he was an astronaut from what I understand. Governor Walz was also former military. I forgot to mention that. But I think she's going to try to go more so with Mark Kelly. He might be more of a safer bet. He doesn't have so much baggage around him for the comments made around Gaza like Josh Shapiro does, or the censorship complex. So I think she may lean a little bit more towards Mark Kelly, but I also don't see her not selecting possibly Josh Shapiro, right? And then we got to ask this question too. Did Kamala hand select these people, or were they chosen for her? Right? You got to think about that. But I'll show you what the polls are showing right now. And I think everybody needs to see this. Things have changed. 2024 general election, Trump versus Kamala Harris. Just FYI, July 30th, 2020, Biden was plus 8.3. And in 2016, Hillary Clinton was plus 0.4. So just to give you an idea. But right now, if you're looking at the polls, it's getting close. Like, she is catching up to Donald Trump. The RCP average right now has Trump at 48.1 and has Harris at 46.1. And we can see other polls here as well, right? The Harvard Harris poll has her at 48, him at 52. Reuters, Trump 42, her 43. That's, I think, the closest, one of the closest ones. We can almost, I guess, say that's basically a tie. Morning Consult 46, 47. Wall Street Journal 49, 47. Forbes 51, 49. New York Times Siena 48, 47. Anyway, you guys get the point. She is catching up to him. And you can see the spread here as well, right? So, but Trump is still leading for the most part right now. That being said, you know, it's going to be close. It's getting close. And I want to just take you to the map here where you can see where Biden withdraws right there, right? So at that point, it was 47.8 Trump, 44.8 Biden. But then once Harris is announced, it was 45.9% for Kamala Harris, 47.5% for Donald Trump. Then we go up. I just want to show you how she's been climbing, right? There was the assassination, yada, yada. He got a little bit of boost after that. And now we are right here. So it is going to be close right now. Now, that being said, anything can happen between now and November. Kamala could be experiencing what we call the initial announcement boost, where you get a big boost after you just announced. RFK Jr. had this as well, and we've seen his polling numbers decrease, especially since Kamala Harris has announced. RFK Jr.'s polling numbers are decreasing. I don't know if people have noticed, but it's happening. So she could be just experiencing that. We don't know. We'll have to wait a couple of weeks to see. That could change. Also, without any debates, I don't know, because there was supposed to be a debate in September. Donald Trump declined to have that debate, apparently, because he believed that the DNC was going to choose someone else at the convention. The convention is in August. I don't think they're going to swap her out. Because how she's polling. So we have to wait and see when there is going to be a debate, because right now we don't even know. Interesting.